On day one of the most talked about public forum on whether or not Ghana needs a new voters register, the opposition New Patriotic Party is leading the charge for a new register.
From the Supreme Court, voter registration is crucial to the success of the entire electoral process. For it to establish the eligibility of citizens to the franchise, it is the gateway to the right to vote, the open door to participation in governance process, and by logical reasoning, the sovereignty of the state. The registration process must therefore be protected from underage persons, non-citizens, and voter fraudsters alike, in order to avoid the process being perceived as flawed, unquote. This is what the Supreme Court said in their ruling. So the Electoral Commission has a duty to protect. It's not for me to say the process gives room for this and that, and that's so we allow it to go. No, the Supreme Court ruled against that.
But as is expected, the ruling NDC is kicking against that idea, questioning whether MPP's proposed solution to the problem of a bloated register would indeed resolve the matter.
Yes, problems exist, but there are systems to deal with those problems. There are established systems to deal with those problems. And for some of the problems, the solution that is being proposed is not a solution that can deal with the problem. For instance, take the issue about inclusion of minors on the register, the allegation of inclusion of minors on the register. We have said elsewhere in our paper that if minors were registered in 2012, would they remain minors up to 2016, for instance? Because age is not static. So if your solution is to target those minors for deletion, or because of the deletion of those minors, you want to undertake a new registration, what you have is that as many of the minors who have grown up into adults will now come openly to register. Have you caught them and deleted them?
Well, the two major political parties have spoken and set into motion the debates that will lead to a final determination. The Civic Forum, CDD, and other political parties have all been addressing the forum. So how are all these going to pan out, and how will these help shape the final outcome? This is today's big story with me, Stephen Enti. Now, the opposition New Patriotic Party has been making its case at the ongoing public forum, with former chairman Peter Mark Manu presenting the party's evidence to support allegations that the current voters register is bloated.
The question is, did you also, having determined that the percent of 18-year-olds in the different registers were varied, did you check if the percentage of the population, 18-year-olds in the different populations as well? So the other is, I'm just wondering how we got the population as the denominator, you know, of the proportion of the population that were in the register. Did you did you project the population from 2010 to 2012? The census includes everybody that lives in Ghana.
Yes, madam. We observed the 18 plus in all the countries we quoted, and the source, as we quoted, was of the africanelections.tripod.com. That's our source. So we did that. Also, we are aware that Ghana has a 2.5% increase in population annually. So we adjusted the 2010 figures to meet the 2015 voters, and took into account what the census said about foreigners, about West African population living here. We took all that into account.
Cost analysis that you have made in terms of identifying, which we can easily identify, and doing away with the errors, the cost involved, as against your analysis of the cost involved in the preparation of a brand new register altogether, so that we can be guided by this.
Let me answer Eme with a quotation from the Supreme Court ruling of Abu Ramadan and Co. Suit number JON 11/2014. And it says, with your permission, Mr. Chair, I'll quote from the Supreme Court. Voter registration is crucial to the success of the entire electoral process. For it to establish the eligibility of citizens to the franchise, it is the gateway to the right to vote, the open door to participation in governance process, and by logical reasoning, the sovereignty of the state. The registration process must therefore be protected from underage persons, non-citizens, and voter fraudsters alike, in order to avoid the process being perceived as flawed, unquote. This is what the Supreme Court said in their ruling. So the Electoral Commission has a duty to protect. It's not for me to say the process gives room for this and that, so we allow it to go. No, the Supreme Court ruled against that.
Well, but the General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Siedu Nketia, believes calling for a new register is not a solution to the credibility of Ghana's register.
Am I to believe that you are categorically saying that there is nothing wrong with our system, and therefore there is no need for any cleaning exercise, much less talk of the question of a new register to be put in place?
Thank you very much. The last question first. Mr. Chairman, Ghana is the only place where, when Electoral Commission conducts elections and declares results, somebody challenges the results in court, and the court upholds the position of the Electoral Commission. We proceed to conclude that the one who lost elections has not suffered loss of public confidence, but the one whose work was confirmed by the Supreme Court is rather the one who must suffer loss of public confidence. I just don't understand, because I thought that the Supreme Court, in upholding the results as declared by Electoral Commission, should lead to increased public confidence in the Commission's work, because there are other people, neutral people, who have come to testify that the Commission has done a good job. So why do we then conclude that because of that Supreme Court thing, there is loss of confidence in our electoral system, for which reason we must proceed to introduce changes, whether they are based on facts or not? The second, the first question, I am saying that yes, problems exist, but there are systems to deal with those problems. There are established systems to deal with those problems. And for some of the problems, the solution that is being proposed is not a solution that can deal with the problem. For instance, take the issue about inclusion of minors on the register, the allegation of inclusion of minors on the register. We have said elsewhere in our paper that if minors were registered in 2012, so would they remain minors up to 2016, for instance? Because age is not static. So if your solution is to target those minors for deletion, or because of the deletion of those minors, you want to undertake a new registration, what you have is that as many of the minors who have grown up into adults will now come openly to register. Have you caught them and deleted them? But the same flaws that led to the minors to register in 2012 in the first place, can you demonstrate to us that those loopholes have been plugged such that the current minors will not enter the register and bloat it further?
Well, the Institute of Democratic Governance says neither the MPP nor the NDC's proposals on how to produce a credible voters register is good enough solution to the problem. Executive Director Dr. Emmanuel Akpete is proposing a third solution, which involves policy interventions and sanctions against those responsible for the bloating of the voters register. I'm sure we'll be playing you a lot of these interactions that went on at the public forum later on Joy News Prime and other news bulletins. But now let's do some discussion. I have with me Mr. Joe Jackson, who is a political analyst. Good evening, sir, and thanks for coming.
Good evening.
So really, for me, I mean, there's nothing said here that I haven't heard before. The case of the MPP presented openly. That's the only thing that makes a difference. They presented a petition to the Electoral Commission, and then Asiedu Nketia comes in to rebut. And obviously, you do expect him to be a bit sarcastic with some of his answers. But here we are. Do you think this is a waste of time?
Waste of time? No. Effective? I'm not sure.
You're not sure. Playing to the gallery?
They're all playing to the gallery. Well, remember that the EC is very concerned about its image. So this whole process for it means let's take it out there. Let the people see that we are making an attempt to be transparent. All the information being presented, the EC knows already.
They're not new.
None of the questions being asked are so insightful or so precise that they elicit new information. No.
That should be waste of time then.
It's not, because remember that not all of us had the privilege of understanding what the arguments were. So in that sense, it serves to inform us. But for the EC process itself, right, this is really for our consumption.
That's right.
As the public, to say, oh, do you see what I'm doing? I'm doing good, which is fine.
Yeah.
But will it change the internal discussion? I don't think so.
Right, let's look at the substance. I mean, the MPP has presented several issues, including allegations that some foreigners are captured in the voters register. Mark Main went on to cite the quotations from the Supreme Court ruling, and really the MPP is coming to reinforce what they've already been saying. But the approach, according to the IDEC Executive Director Emmanuel Akpete, Dr. Emmanuel Akpete, he feels that all of these proposals, new register, no new register, clean it, won't be the solution. Do you think, I mean, following the debates, that any of the parties have put anything concrete on the table?
Okay, now here's the thing. Whatever solution we propose, first of all, must be holistic, cost effective, and must fix the things that led to the flaw. And remember that, in truth, however complicated a computer system you put in place, if the people manning the system decide to be corrupt, it's utterly useless.
That's true.
So really what I'm listening for, and I'm not sure I've heard very well, is this. These are the things that we will put in place to make sure that this process does not deliver a flawed result. Now, it's interesting to hear the NDC's argument, which I love. It says the thing is flawed, but hey,
every human institution is flawed.
Every human institution is flawed, and worst of all, well, Even if you put a new register again, it will be flawed again.
And the 13 years will become 18
It will become
anyway.
18 and life
Oh
will
my
go
God,
on.
yeah.
I mean, that is really a disingenuous argument. And I don't think that is at the heart. That is
At the heart of the solution.
Really playing to the gallery and doing what he does best. There's really substantial issues to be dealt with. How do we make sure that if we put a new register in place, that the flaws that led to this present bloating, and you know, those of us who sit
So
outside,
flaws like verify who really is a Ghanaian and whether they are 18, which address, where they live, whether they have dual citizenships. These are all issues that are coming up.
and to be truthful, both parties, for some of us observers, look like they're playing games. Why do I say so? Every party in its stronghold plays the game, right? Now, it just seems to me like the NPP has come up and saying, well, we want a clean register. And NDC saying, no, we don't need a clean register. We are in control. We know what we're doing. They're both playing games. And to some extent, it is obvious for those of us outside. Listen, if you ask me, we need a new register. But we don't need a new register for a new register's sake. We need a new register so that these same parties can pack the register. And until we hear a solution that is cost effective, that can be implemented in the time frame. And remember, this is October, the end of October. You've got November, December, and another 11 months. You've got barely 13 months to the time of the election. Can we put a new register in place in time? In our current set of circumstances?
It's doubtful.
No, let's forget the timing. Do we have the money?
Right, Mr. Jackson, let me leave you. I'll get onto the telephone lines now and speak to Dr. Eric Odro Osai, who is with the Local Government Institute. Good evening, sir, and thanks for your time.
Good evening.
We've gone over this now and then. I mean, now it's just the public show that we have seen. The MPP presents its case, the NDC presents its case, and all the other parties, PNC, CPP, PPP, they're all making their voices heard. Is this issue only about being heard or being seen?
Thank you very much. I think the issues are about being seen and being heard at the same time. I would say that it is not the position of any political party that is relevant in this case now. It is the position of the whole of Ghana that is relevant in this matter. Because when it comes to elections, it is not only the political parties. You have the entire electorate. You have Ghana as a nation, corporate Ghana. We even have the international community. So it is not the position of any political party. My view is that we are overhyping this business of new voters or electoral register. What we need is a credible register as one of the electoral reforms. There are a number of electoral reforms that we need to undertake. What we have not been able to do as a nation, which has brought us to where we are today, is not being able to put it in law how the electoral register should be reviewed. If all these things have been provided for in law, we wouldn't have found ourselves where we are. Because at the moment, everybody is coming up with one idea or the other, or the best way of developing a new electoral register. But what is the national policy direction? What is the national guideline? The Electoral Commission has set up a panel to review and receive input from the public. Is that the way to go? Is it a precedent we want to set? Can we sustain this precedent? So for me, I think what we need to do as a nation is come up with a policy guideline or a legislative provision on how, as a nation, and we should review our voters' register, how to establish a credible register, the period within which it should be done, who should do it. In my view, who should do it is not an issue at all, because the Electoral Commission is there. The question now is how to do it. Let us provide for it in law. Again, we have a number of reforms, and I think we have not completed. Which ones are needed in the short term? Which ones are needed in the medium term? And which ones are needed in the long term? If we don't prioritize it, we will go to and fro, and 2016 will come, and we'll still be at where we are. I think we should sit as a nation and then identify all the areas of reform, how to reform prioritize it, and then indicate who is doing what. What is important for us as a nation is the Ghanaian position, not the NPP position or the NDC position.
Interesting, Doc. I'll have you hold, Mr. Jackson. He's making a very important suggestion here that this is a Ghanaian problem, and we need to not only review the register, but review the laws that govern compilation of a voters' register. Is this something that we have the capacity to do, especially looking at the fact that we're almost at the end of the year?
You know, I agree with him 100%, and then turn around and ask him, where's the time? And the way everything is set in partisanship, each proposal will be fought tooth and nail depending on who sees a benefit from a certain position.
And we'll be going around in circles.
We'll be going around in circles. And in truth, there's some really hard decisions to be made, right? Which is, do we have the time? Do we have the time to set in motion this process, which will be the best thing to do, to say, let's start from scratch. How do we review a register? How do we prevent these same parties from packing the register?
Perhaps
when
we can start by changing the law.
I agree, but changing the law. Remember that what makes all this difficult is that the lawmakers are in different parties already. So it's going to be a really hard grind. And some people may even argue that going back to Parliament to change the law is just taking it and handing it to NDC to vote what they would like to do. So in a lot of ways, we are between a rock and a very hard place. What I disagree with him, though, is about this. We're not hyping this issue. This electoral register has the potential, this issue has the potential of exploding that election.
Perhaps I reckon that when he says we're hyping it, is looking at the fact that we already know what we should do to fix it. So why all the hula baloo about it?
No, the hula baloo is we're not sure what to do. I mean, we don't know what to do. Truly, we don't even have, if you ask me today as I stand, I don't even have all the information. Do I think that the register is right? No, absolutely. I don't need an NPP to tell me that. Do I think that both sides of the divide are at fault? Yes.
Yes.
Do we have the time? Do we have the money? And have we identified a process that will prevent this from occurring again when the shoe is on the other foot?
We're not sure. No evidence show that.
Yes.
Dr. Odrosai, now let's look at the way forward. I mean, I expect that the Electoral Commission in tomorrow's presentation will try and come up with a compromise position. But what should we be doing so it doesn't appear like we are overhyping this, and so that we can actually narrow ourselves down to the solution itself?
I think what we should do as a nation is come to an agreement that after every presidential and parliamentary election, we are going to review or revise our voters' register. That's an agreement, a national agreement we need to come with. Having come to that agreement, we also need to agree on how to revise, how to go about the revision. Then after that, we have to identify other reform areas. Credible voters register alone does not lead to credible elections. It is one of the factors. But there are other numerous factors, remember, that the Supreme Court mentioned in its ruling. We should take those ones too on board, develop an action plan, and then identify the ones that are very critical in the short term that needed to be resolved before we go into 2016. Class others into medium term that goes beyond 2016. Use another election, maybe the district level election, to test run that one, and then class others into a long-term system, a long-term process. Now, we need to prepare ourselves for 2016. But which of the reforms are urgent and which are not urgent now? I see the credibility of the voters register as urgent, but that is not the only one. We need to agree on how to go about it, and we need to add others to it so that we are very sure that going into 2016 will be clear. As we're sitting now, can anybody tell me what the law says? What the law says about how to revise our voters register?
No.
We need a policy guideline on that. Can anybody tell me the duration specifically the periodicity. Are we required to review our voters register? These are the lacunas in our law we need to resolve once and for all so that we can move on into the future with confidence for our electoral process.
Right, thanks very much, Dr. Oduro Osai. Dr. Oduro Osai is head of research at the Ghana Institute, the Local Government Institute here in Accra. So, Mr. Jackson, he made some important points. You want to react? You want to say something to what he said?
I do agree with him on one thing. This is an urgent issue. There may be other urgent issues, but this is definitely an urgent issue. Now, the voters register was never meant to be a static thing.
But it has been like that.
Exactly, which is wrong.
And every now and then we go and add more. We add the ones who are turning 18 and then we exhibit it. I feel that the processes where we go through the exhibition and verifications have all been flawed over the years.
They have. And remember, who go out, even in Accra and forget the rural areas, who is taking people off because they have passed away?
No one.
No one. Who is automatically registering people? Listen, our births and deaths. You see, that's why, unfortunately, this is not a simple thing as go call people in and have another voters and have another count and register everybody. Because if you don't fix the process,
including getting a reliable national database, which Dr. Reku Brobe raised.
You need a reliable national database. You need a database that has to integrate into things like the national ID, the national health insurance system, the passporting system, and all that. Now, unless you're doing that, and unless you're including a process to take out those who have passed away and to add on those who have been who have reached the vote right age,
we will just be marking time.
We'll just be going round in circles. And I assure you, we'll be here again 4 years from now, God willing, giving us a life. We'll be here 4 years from now, this time going through the same argument all over again.
What are your expectations from the Electoral Commission's presentation tomorrow? What do you expect them to say?
They'll cut a compromise. Whether the compromise will be acceptable to any of the
it's also another thing.
Is another thing. But they'll cut a compromise. I mean, they don't have a choice. I think that they will look at the timing and they will say, we have to do some sort of cleanup.
But we don't have the money for a new register.
We don't have the money to start the process all over again. We don't have the time to start the process all over again. My expectation is they will try and do some sort of cleanup. How extensive the cleanup is going to be the question we are all going to be asking.
Right.
Long term, all the issues have to be addressed.
Right, Mr. Jackson, we're grateful for your time on today's big story. My name is Stephen Enti, and thanks to you for making time to be with us here on today's big story. Good evening and enjoy the rest of our programs.